Ladies and gentlemen, can we please settle down at the earliest so that we can begin the session? Please take your seats. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly take your seats. We're starting now. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for making it. I know that you've had a very, very long day. And knowing you, there's probably a graveyard shift still left of work to be done. I know that you were supposed to take a flight out tonight, and you've changed that. And every time we invite you, we know that you're coming from a set of very, very intense meetings. So I want to just say that it's been a fascinating day for us. We are very fortunate to hold this session on the 101 days of the third term of the Honorable Prime Minister and the BJP governments, and the kind of momentum that has been built is quite incredible. So I thought, without getting into speeches, and I know the Honorable Minister said that, look, I don't want to do speeches, let's have an interaction. So I'm going to jump right into that, sir. I'm going to start with over the last 3 or 4 years, I want to say, over a decade, but certainly last 4 years, you have been very focused on building an export-based economy, both on the merchandise side and the services side. I was at a 3-hour meeting of APCs just last week where there was intense dialogue about which sector. So I want to just share with the delegates today on what is your vision, what is the plan, how do we get to that $2 trillion mark at the end of 2030, which is what you have announced.
Thank you, Virat, and my sincerest apologies to all of you. The last few days have been totally packed, and I just told Virat I slept only 2 hours last night because I was in my constituency in Mumbai. We had Ganesh Visarjan, Anant Chaturdashi yesterday, and wound up at 2 o'clock, reached home at 3, took a flight at 7 this morning because we had a cabinet meeting.
Very thankful, sir, very thankful.
But delighted to be amongst all of you because I missed out last year. I was hoping to be able to meet all of you last year, but something went wrong. Today also I was to go to Laos, but now I've changed that to tomorrow, so I'm here with you. But my apologies, and then I had a patent office program. We've done something smart, by the way. I'll take a minute to tell you what my previous program
By all
was.
means, sir.
You know, patents and trademarks designs was always a little bit of a difficult department. Some of you may have encountered it also. We've been relentlessly working to clean up the systems, bring technology into play, and I'm delighted to share with you that in the last 9 or 10 years, we have increased the patent approval from 6,000 to 103,000 last year. The pendency has drastically fallen, and I think we've approved appointing another 600 officials in this office, the CGPDTM office. And hopefully another 12 months, we'll have zero pendency. Everything will be within the defined timeline that we have determined for each of the processes that do. Today, what we did was bring artificial intelligence into trademarks. As you may be aware, we have millions of trademarks now. When you apply for a trademark approval, as I think many of you may have done also for your companies sometime or the other, they have to go through tons and tons of data. Then they'll end up approving something or disapproving something. Then there are objections, legal cases. It's quite a messy affair. So we've brought in artificial intelligence by which as soon as your application comes in, we'll compress a 6-month process into maybe a week or two, because the system will throw out everything that is similar that has ever been approved in India before. At some stage, I'd like to integrate it with the world. But right now, we have all India data put into the system, and anything similar will be available with a kind of a heat map to show what is the similarity and what is the potential disputes and whether we can approve or not approve. It's available in different languages, the regional languages, because we want the whole government processes to be inclusive. We are moving next stage to designs. And today we had WIPO representatives with whom I've asked my team to work and see which is the best-in-class process and the least time taken anywhere in the world. So for trademarks, which is that country X which is best, fastest, most efficient, high quality. For patents, which is the country Y. For designs, which is the country Z. And we're going to try and do better than that. That's my task to my team. Can we better the best and offer the India story, the India CGPDDM office? Why I'm saying this, these are all the building blocks which encourage us to aim big. If you see the journey of the last 10 years, or even of the last 100 days, every effort has been made to strengthen the foundation on which we hope to make India a developed nation by 2047. And with the larger vision in mind, we prepare our intermittent goals, what we'll do in the first 100 days, what will we do in the first year, what will we do in the third term of the Modi government, what we will do in the fourth term of the Modi government. So 29 to 34, what will be our actions? Then what we'll need to do in our next term from 34 to 39. And that's how we've broken down the vision of 2047. Of course, the joke is lost. It's too late in the evening for any of you to respond to what I've just said.
Yeah, after 8:30, the joke comes after 2 seconds or so.
And I'm sorry I'm holding up your drinks and dinner.
Please,
But
we want to listen.
I wanted to speak about this patent office program, which I've just concluded and rushed here, because these are the type of initiatives. How can we do work more intelligently? How can we engage with modern technology? How can we bring innovation to the fore? Innovation need not be just engineering innovation or accounting innovation. It's in processes, it's in the way we think, our very mindset. And I believe the nation is preparing in a variety of ways through different decisions made over the last 10 years and 100 days to engage with the world on equal terms, to engage with the world from a position of strength, to engage with the world with a spirit of competitiveness. While we do want to collaborate, we are doing FTAs, for example, we've already done some, we're working on some more. We'll collaborate with countries. We'll learn from other countries. We have an open mind. We are not closed. And we'll compete with countries without SOPs, without necessarily hoping to have clutches, subsidies, incentives. They can be a kickstart, but there cannot be a permanency around these. So like a scooter in the young old days, we used to kickstart and then drive it. All these government initiatives can only work like a kickstart. But at the end of the day, we are looking at trade, investments, all of these, standing on good government policy, standing on the demographic dividend, the rule of law that we offer, the demand that 1.4 billion people generate, the talent and skills that our youthful population with an average age of 28.4 years has to offer. With these ingredients, these foundations, with a strong macroeconomy, Our forex reserves now at $689 billion amongst the 4 or 5 countries which are as high as this in the world and growing rapidly. Remittances alone, the world's largest, $130 billion. Our sustainability push, we have exceeded all the targets we set in Paris and now are challenging ourselves to do much more. Renewable energy, what we were to do in 2030, we completed in 2022. And now we have challenged ourselves to do 500 gigawatt by 2030. Now that means the entire electricity grid needs to be revamped because intermittent power has to get into the system at that great level, at that great speed. When all these things are seen in perspective, then the $2 trillion export target of 2030 is not totally impossible. I know after I set that target, we did suffer 2 years of COVID and lost out on at least 2 years which were very precious. Services sector continues to grow well. They are at about 6% growth. They can do a little better. GCCs have come into play in a big way. So we have more than 1,000 GCCs in India already. We believe we can at least grow by 50% in the next 2 or 3, 4 years. There are a lot of interest in existing and new companies to expand their design centers, their innovation, R&D centers, their capacities, capabilities here to service their international operations. So I think services will probably lead the runway to $1 trillion of service exports. In goods, we will need to see a lot more happening on the manufacturing side. We could also look innovatively on the manufactured goods with MROs, with the story of Apple being repeated in a way in other areas. So we are working closely with industry to see how other sectors also can produce both for the world and for India's big demand and take our merchandise exports also to $1 trillion. A little bit of a challenge there, but we will persevere, and I do believe, given the mood of the exporters, which you also saw last week, we can get there.
So, sir, I just want to get that breakup in your mind. It's out of 2 trillion, you're suggesting that it will be about $1 trillion of services and $1 trillion of merchandise, or would it be like 1.2 trillion of merchandise and about 800 services? You think
It'll be 1 trillion each.
Each, that's the number.
Yeah, that's the goal, and I think that is what will happen, because on the services side, India has demonstrated to the world a lot of potential and strengths. Right. Even on business accounting, financial services, engineering services.
Project exports.
Now architectural work, engineering, structural work, project exports. Yeah. The more and more countries around the world are recognizing the India's strength. So I think services has great potential actually to grow in double digits.
Thank you for that. Now, if I could request your sort of comment on this industrial smart cities envisaged under the National Industrial Corridor Development Scheme, where we're hoping that as a nation we will be able to not only build these states but also replicate, let us say, 1 or 2 Singapores somewhere. What would that look like? What's the track to that? What are the challenges you see, and what is it that industry can do to support that vision?
Thank you, Virat. It's a decision we took very recently to add 12 new industrial townships to the 8 we had approved in the last 10 years. Many of you may recall, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee had created the Golden Quadrilateral, the first major initiative on expanding our infrastructure to take it to world-class levels and connecting the country. Prime Minister Modi in the last 10 years has used the one nation concept in a variety of initiatives. One nation, one tax, we got the GST. One nation, one grid, We got the entire transmission grid interconnected. And that was a game changer when it comes to availability of electricity and to our sustainability thrust, because now with one grid, we could add clean energy or solar, wind energy at different places in greater degree. And similarly, today we have passed in the cabinet, one nation, one election. We have accepted the report that the President Kovind committee gave us. And we are seeking a wider discussion amongst the people of India and hoping to receive support from other political parties also. Of course, I believe many of the opposition parties have already started objecting to it, because I think they're happier to let the country spend lakhs of crores every year only on elections being held all the time. The Kovind committee found that in 2 or 3 districts, out of 365 days, there was model code of conduct on 330 odd days. So, it just paralyzes governance. Similarly, our electoral rolls are a mess. One election we go and vote, another election we find our name is only deleted or transferred to some other election booth. Imagine the amount of law and order issues we face because of elections, and the strain on the entire police and law and order machinery with repeated elections one after the other. Up to 1967, all elections were held together. Now we have them all across the year. So similarly, the idea of making 8 industrial corridors like a necklace all over India was taken forward. We first approved 4 townships in Dholera in Gujarat, Sambhajinagar, Shendra Binkin in, that's original name was Aurangabad, in Maharashtra, close to Ellora Ajanta if you want more context. The 3rd was in Greater Noida, and the 4th was near Ujjain, Vikram Udyogpuri. All 4 are completed. We had imagined at that point of time that we will get about 50,000 crores of investment interest in these 4, for the size of these 4. We still have probably sold barely 50% of the developed area. And the investment on these 4 is over 172,000 crores, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs directly and indirectly. And that encouraged us. We approved 4 more in earlier years. They are under development. Krishnapatnam, port-based development. One is in Tumkuru, close to Bangalore. 4 more are under development. And 8 we have just approved. Again, length and breadth of the country. 2 in Andhra, 1 in Maharashtra, Dighi port, just near the Dighi port, 100 kilometers from Mumbai. 1 in Gaya in Bihar, so all across the country. 1 in Punjab also, I think, Rajpura. The idea is that we'll provide state-of-the-art infrastructure, modern infrastructure, world-class infrastructure, provide common effluent treatment plants, ensure utilities like water, digital connectivity, power is adequately available. These are clean cities. Environmental approval in principle for the entire township is taken in advance. So any further approvals become much easier, and green industry and all doesn't need any more approval. So idea is to try and make a one-stop shop available locally to get all your approvals and help you develop industry. I'm trying to suggest to many countries. I did that with Japan earlier today also. I talked to Switzerland in my last visit in Zurich. I talked to Singapore 3 weeks ago when I was there. I'm trying to suggest that we create partnerships with countries in a manner that in some of these townships of their choice. So Singapore can come and choose out of these 20, whichever one they like best. And we'll try to create a small ecosystem there which fits into the life of people in Singapore. We'll have restaurants serving Singapore food. We'll have schools, colleges, and hospitals of Singaporeans coming in and setting them up over here. Homes will be built like they are built in Singapore. So for the Japanese today, I was promising them a golf course, which is their latest passion. Idea being that whichever is the area you pick up, we'll create a mini township which suits people, expats coming from your country. And that way you can create your own ecosystems, create your own industrial infrastructure there, create your own service sector infrastructure there to suit your requirements. And I believe that that's something which all of you may like to also consider, since you represent or you have deep roots with many international companies. I think you may like to talk to, or amongst yourself, the Swedish group may talk amongst themselves, the Americans may talk amongst themselves, and help us identifying which is the most suitable. It could be more than one. You could choose Diggy Port for port-led development, and you could choose Tumkuru in Bangalore for maybe the next round of services or IT services. So I think the idea is only to make life more comfortable. On our part, we have, as a next step, we are going to send out teams to man offices of Invest India, NICDIC, the company which is developing all these townships, possibly ECGC, so that I can also start offering services to importers, exporters in foreign countries, and knowledge expansion. And at a later stage, I'm thinking of getting tourism also, so that every one of our international offices has a tourist element. So trade, technology, investment, and tourism. This would be our outreach. We are starting with Singapore, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, possibly New York, one in Silicon Valley, one in Zurich. So we are planning now these offices, which will be an India government outreach, in a manner that a person sitting anywhere in the world can buy his land sitting there, can see the piece of land that he's buying, can know who his neighbors are, can get all approvals on a single window online, and wherever he's stuck, through video conferencing, we can sort out the loose ends and make it really easy to come to India, to invest in India, to do business in India.
And I want to add just, the Honorable Minister is saying, he told the EPC when we were there in this context, is that he's requesting multinational Indian companies who have real estate or spaces available to think about this in a creative manner, so that these places can be housed in locations which are most effective, an offer that he's made for us to come back to him with recommendations. So thank you for that. So I wanted to draw your attention to this world of geopolitics. Commerce and Industry Ministers before you, even 4 years ago, had to worry a little bit about geopolitics and defense sensitivities and all of that. But the impact that geopolitics is having on trade, which you have to take into consideration for every discussion that you have, coalitions of countries, FTAs, who do you work with, how much you work with them, all that. Could you give some perspective on how is that impacting us, both in a positive way and the challenges? Because there is, I don't think any part of the last 40, 50 years have seen this level of rapid changes and uncertainty which impact trade, GDP, economies, jobs, everything. Could you spend a few, because this must be one of the many things that you have sleepless nights about.
Well, geopolitics affects everything: trade, inflation, the economy, GDP, interest rates, stock markets, shipping routes. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock onwards, we are sitting down with the entire shipping industry, with the Shipping Ministry and Commerce Ministry in Tao, to look at what's happening with container shortages, what we can do. Freight rates are skyrocketing. So we are sitting down tomorrow morning on a very extended session to try and work out how do we overcome this impact of the Red Sea crisis and the two wars. So it's a continuous effort. But I can tell you two or three things which may interest all of you. First of all, I think the Commerce Ministry and the Foreign Ministry are today, and I think this really turned very sharply after Jaishankar came in. Dr. Jaishankar and I came into our respective ministries around the same time. And I promise you, friends, that the relationship, the close coordination with which Commerce and Foreign Affairs are working today is remarkable. We are literally on a call with each other, exchanging notes, supporting each other, standing with each other in the times of crisis, adding value to each other's work. And the support we have got in Commerce from Foreign Ministry is truly unbelievable. When it came down to visa issues and the Commerce Industry Ministry requested, it was sorted out. When it comes to my wanting to nudge a country a little bit sternly for an unfair treatment we are getting on trade, I get full support from the Foreign Ministry. I think without their support, we couldn't have overcome this period of COVID and thereafter as well as we have navigated. After all, you imagine we were at about $300 billion of goods and about $200 billion of services, roughly 500, for a very long period of time. $500 billion was our export for a fairly long period of time. Prime Minister Modi, just after the initial year of COVID, 6th of August, because that's a red letter day for India's foreign trade, 6th of August 2021, he addressed the entire industry ecosystem and export ecosystem, export promotion councils, industry,
and embassies,
captains,
worldwide,
and
embassies worldwide.
180 odd embassies across the world,
live,
right?
I was there.
And it was a remarkable evening. And that day changed the mood of the nation, the mood of business persons. The country started accepting export as an integral part of our duty, not just an incidental outcome of our work. And from then, we haven't looked back. So from 500 in the year 2021, we are last year, 23-24, at about $778 billion. I'm hoping that this year we'll cross $825 billion by the time we end the year. And all of this is despite COVID running right into almost 2022, the Ukraine war, Russia war thereafter, the Hamas-Israel conflict, the Red Sea issues with the Houthis, which is haunting us the last year or so. Despite all of that, despite the Cold War almost between the West and Russia, the sanctions, the care we have to take. Very often somebody comes and tells me, I have this product, I have a huge market in a particular country, and I have to say, be careful, you may not, it's a product that I can visualize has possible dual use. You don't want to fall on the wrong side of a much larger ecosystem in the future. So, payment problems for exports. So, with all of this, I think achieving this kind of a result has only been possible because Prime Minister Modi has maintained a very fair balance in all of these conflicts. He has advocated diplomacy, he's advocated dialogue as the only way to end conflict and war. He believes that this truly is not the time for war. It's from his heart that he says it. And I can assure all of you that the world today understands, recognizes, and respects India's position in these various geopolitical concerns, and also looks up to India's leadership, aka Mr. Modi's leadership, on trying to help us or help the world overcome the crisis. They recognize that when we buy oil from Russia, while on the one hand it's our necessity, we cannot break off relations with Russia. We need oil, and with sanctions on Iran, with sanctions on Venezuela, there are not too many options left. They also recognize that actually India's buying oil from Russia has helped stabilize the world market. Otherwise, with the kind of actions that OPEC is taking, if we were out there in the market with our full demand of 5.4 million barrels a day, oil would have been at $300 or $400 a barrel by now, and wouldn't have come down to 72, which we see today. It's been a great cooling impact that India's decision has had. I think today, India charting its own course and protecting its national interest has helped us remain a robust economy, the fastest growing large economy, helped us bridge our trade gaps, trade deficits with significant foreign inflows, the world's largest remittances, $130 billion last year. A lot of non-trade incomes giving us further foreign exchange. Investments are on a roll, both FDI and FII investments coming in large measure. And to sum it all up, $689 billion of forex reserves today means that whatever we may need to import, whatever may be the level of trade deficits, given stable remittances, given stable investments, given stable inflows on many counts, I don't think India has to worry about the foreign exchange risk anymore for many years to come. Particularly my conversations, let's say, with the world's largest investment bank in the last few days and the world's largest investment company about 6 months back or 9 months back. Both world leaders on the economy have confirmed to me that we don't even factor the rupee exchange rate risk anymore, because we are very confident that you'll be stable. And I can share one or two insights which some of you may not have realized as yet. A is, of course, the compounding impact of this growth. You all must be factoring in your calculations. But do you realize the India GDP today and the India GDP on purchasing power parity basis, we still have a huge gap. It's almost twice. On PPP basis, our GDP is almost twice. A Coke bottle in India costs far less than a Coke bottle in any of these developed worlds. And many other issues. Your rentals that your companies pay are far lower than the rentals you would pay in New York City, for example, or Japan or anywhere else. The costs of running this whole annual forum, the 11th annual forum, would be minuscule compared to what you would pay if you were in Europe or Japan or Korea or any of these countries. Now, that purchasing power parity gap will gradually get bridged, which lends me to believe that actually India should start bracing itself, preparing itself for rupee appreciation. I mean, I was reading that you had sessions around a $7 trillion economy by 2030 or 32. Different numbers have been floating around. 32 to ghar baithe bhi ho jayega with the 7% growth. We have to work towards making it happen by 2030. And there are two elements to it. We can easily grow a little faster. What we need to do is build capacity to grow faster. We need the right infrastructure companies. Can't do with one L&T. We need 20 L&Ts or companies of that size and scale and quality. We need to have much more manufacturing growth in India so that the demand can be met and we don't have to depend on a northern neighbor who sends substandard goods at predatory prices or very often prices at which we can't figure out because even the raw material cost is more than the price of a finished good. So we really need to focus on a few items. We can do this by 2030, doubling of our economy. And there could be an element of 1% or so every year added through rupee appreciation also. So the jury is out on that. I have been one of those who's advocated this for 20 years. So it's my pipe dream, some can call it, or my courage of conviction from since 2000 that India should move into the era of rupee appreciation. The Vajpayee period in government, you saw that happening. Even in the Modi government, I can explain to you how you saw that happening in the first few years, because the rupee was at 68 rupees to a dollar in September 2013. Mr. Chidambaram borrowed heavily through FCNRB accounts, paying almost twice the then prevailing interest rates in dollar terms, 2% or so more. So it was twice what the rate was. And he borrowed $35 billion to shore up a very sagging foreign currency reserve. And artificially, we saw the rupee appreciate between September 13 and May 14 to, I think, 54 or 55 rupees or something. It was a very artificial, borrowing-driven phenomena. We have not let the fisc or let the country borrow indiscriminately in foreign exchange. We believe that foreign exchange borrowings are a long-term threat to the nation's sovereignty in decision-making and our own strength. So if you look at current figures of forex borrowing on the country, it's really minuscule compared to our peers. And that gives us strength to imagine a 7-8% growth on GDP at constant prices, possibly 1% or so appreciation, and we can get there.
So I want to show you that we planned this annual forum, like I said, on the 101st day of the government, and that we picked the date purposefully to be able to have that discussion. And stakeholders after stakeholders, speakers, have actually shown that positivity and the optimism that you have expressed. So this house, at least, is certainly behind you in sort of making that happen. I'm very conscious of time. You've slept for 2 hours. I'm going to close with 2 questions. One, you have this group.
I have a marriage to attend.
So I'm going to quickly wrap this up. First is that you have talked about restructuring Invest India. A lot of people here work with Invest India, have great reason to engage with them because they bring in investments, they have day-to-day issues in expanding businesses, regulatory challenges. So could you spend a few minutes just talking about what your vision for this new avatar of Invest India is, so that we can be more enlightened? Secondly, do you see a role change for DPIIT as well, or will that be along the same lines as going forward? Just this, because these are 2 bodies that we interact with the most. I interact with them.
Well, I'd rather look for suggestions from your August gathering and your team.
Okay.
What we have thought of is that investment and trade are quite correlated. I think an international company first begins with trade. Once they're able to create a demand or recognize the demand in the country, they start looking at investments or possibly manufacturing or working in the country. They also want to wet their feet and get a sense of how it is working here. My idea was that whether we can make Invest India responsible for both trade and investments. There are different schools of thought. Another school of thought tells me there's a specialization around investment and another around trade. I also want to put the overlay, as I told you, we want to do in the international offices of Invest India and NICDIC working together so that we can have a single stop shop for all requirements, right from land up to approvals, to power connections, water connections, and the works, being available to them wherever they are at the click of a button with local offices to support. So that's where the idea of combining 3 or 4 departments and presenting a whole of the government approach internationally. I've already asked Invest India to start supporting Indian companies also. I don't see any reason why an investment promotion body should only be looking at foreign companies. Suppose you and I were to do an investment or become entrepreneurs, which I suspect you will not for some time, and I am now in a in a field where I don't think I'm getting back to entrepreneurship, which I did when I was 17 years old. But why should not the Indian investors also get the same support from Invest India? So I've asked Invest India to start looking at hand-holding Indian companies and Indian investors as much as they do for foreigners. We have also tried to now introduce Invest India role in the new age sectors. So you will see a lot of new people have joined Invest India with technology background, IT background, services background, which brings two benefits to Invest India. A, it's thinking more in a structured manner. Invest India is working with processes and is much more process-driven, much more clinical in its approach, how we are going to attract investments. And the second is with their knowledge, domain knowledge of new age sectors. We see that they are able to attract companies in the semiconductor industry and, AI and all of that. So these are the thoughts we have around Invest India and how DPIIT and Commerce can engage with you. Frankly, we would like you to tell us what you expect of us. We would like you to tell us where you want decriminalization of laws. I want to bring a Jan Vishwas Bill Part 2 very soon. We would like you to tell us which are those compliance burdens which are cumbersome. It could be at the state, it could be at the corporation or panchayat level. We will, on our part, try to do the best to work with the states also. I just had 2 engagements with the states, one the Board of Trade in Mumbai and one the Industry Ministers Conference. In both, I explained to my colleague ministers from the states that, look, end of the day, if you promise subsidies and don't deliver, you are hurting your long-term interests. If you attract industry, you attract investment, if you focus on exports, something the states or districts never thought was their job in earlier times. If you focus on all of this, you will create ecosystems which will create jobs for your people. You will start having greater GST collection. So I've been trying to encourage them to start respecting ease of doing business, to start recognizing that they'll have to support industry and then deliver on their promises. They can't show a rosy picture and then when the guy gets into dialogue or starts actually investing, he gets stuck with irrational demands. I think many states are biting the bullet. So for example, a state like UP has become the darling of investors today. The law and order situation is good. They're delivering on their promises. They're building world-class infrastructure. And they got 40 lakh crores or thereabouts of commitments for investment in their last investor summit. And I've done some grounding of investments also in some programs there. I believe 70-80% of them have already been grounded. So states which are politically stable, states which have decisive leadership, states which have high integrity levels, more honesty in their work, and states which work in tandem with the center rather than opposition for the sake of opposition. So I had a NICDIC proposal from a particular state and then they withdrew that proposal. So I couldn't create an industrial township in that state, much as I would have liked to. Many times when I'm taking feedback of how many states have adopted, let's say, some ease of doing business measure that we have introduced, they'll come up with the number 26 out of all the 28 states, and then it doesn't take rocket science to figure out which are the 2 which would not have implemented it. Sadly, some take pride in opposing everything that is suggested by the center, which would otherwise be good for them, attract business, attract investment, and create jobs for their people. So I think that's where the discerning eye from all of you will help your companies choose the right state and place to work, looking at the overall plus and minus. And we on our part are ever willing to engage with any state, even if they are antagonistic to us. to at least make an effort. And sometimes, as many of you are already aware, looking at the profile of your work, batchmates matter more than the politicians. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you've given us for to sort of try and come back to you. Thank you for the offer. We will take you up on that. We'll come back with recommendations, including on exports. There are new sectors that are emerging, new areas that will come up. E-commerce is one of those that are throwing up a lot of exports now. There could be a great future. I'm going to turn to my colleague, Major Goswami from TCS, to the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Virat. And sir, this is a room full after 12 hours of sessions at close to 10 p.m. in the evening. A room full of public affairs professionals who are the interface between the industry and the government to bring all that to reality, what you have just laid down the vision. So ladies and gentlemen, let us start with first a round of applause for the Honorable Minister. We sincerely thank you for making time for this annual forum, sir. I understand your demand and the demanding schedule that you have had, but thank you so much for laying down this vision. There is so much to take away from this session, but I'm going to focus only on two aspects. How can we better the West? That's one. And while we grow and rapidly and achieve the targets that have been laid down by the government, how can we do it responsibly and sustainably? I think those two aspects sum up the complete discussion. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being such an engaging audience. Thank you so much.